Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming at you live from Film Fanatic headquarters. It is Wednesday, about 9:50. So, yeah, the first week back of the new year, back to I guess our normal way of life now that the holidays are done. So, yeah, I finished watching all movies related to Christmas. It's funny, as much as I love Christmas, and holly or I should say holiday themed movies, particularly around say Halloween. There's not a whole lot around Thanksgiving, but there's a couple that I equate, or that I for more, well, really in general, but like for nostalgic reasons. The movie that I equate to Thanksgiving is The Godfather, my favorite movie of all time. But there's not a whole. That's pretty much it. I can't really think of any other films that I feel are, at least for me personally, tied to Thanksgiving. Although with The Godfather, there is a. I mean that film covers about 15 years or so of the Corleone family, but there is a big chunk of that film that does take place during Christmas time. So technically, you could look at that as a Christmas film, but from I don't know, maybe an aesthetic point of view. But obviously, Halloween. There's a bazillion movies tied to that holiday, and horror in general. I mean, that's just kind of how I am. Those are just movies that I watch year round. So it's not really any different. I do around Halloween. I do tend to watch movies that are definitely more Halloween centric, I guess if you want to call it that. Christmas, definitely. There's a ton of movies tied to that holiday, and I definitely only watch those movies around Christmas time. I don't usually watch Christmas movies outside of the holiday season, particularly in December. I definitely don't have that drive to. I recently watched a podcast from this guy, actually YouTube show from one of my favorite guys online, Mood 616. He's a Canadian YouTube dude who reviews all kinds of great, underground exploitation films. And he said too, like in this one show that I watched, where he just got an order in very recently, and it was after Christmas, and there was a handful of Christmas movies, and there were a few movies that he had not seen, and he has no desire to watch them now. He's gonna wait till next Christmas to watch them. I'm kind of that way too with Christmas. I like even a movie like Die Hard, for instance, which I feel is one of the best Christmas movies, and just one of the best American action movies. I can't really watch that outside of the holidays. It's I watch that I watch that every year at Christmas time, always do, and Christmas Vacation, and I always watch for Halloween. I always watch John Carpenter's The Original. Those are like three movies that I always watch during the holidays. But Halloween, it's different for me. I can watch that or any of those films really tied to that franchise. I can watch those any year, but I can't really watch Christmas oriented movies. So it's kind of a funny thing. And the other thing is that as much as I am into the holidays, and and especially like Christmas, I after 2 or 3 days of the holidays, kind of over, I am totally done. I'm exhausted, and I go through this weird period. It's funny. I go through this weird phase of a few hours after Christmas ends. Technically, the presents are done, and you do your you have your dinner and you do that kind of thing, and things are kind of settling in. I get this because of the build up and kind of the anticipation and the excitement and all that stuff. I get like this weird melancholy kind of thing, a wave over me where I'm kind of sad that it's over. But then 2 days after, just when I see people who still have Christmas things up, or even in my own house where I have like a Christmas tree set up, I'm totally done and exhausted by Christmas, and I take everything related to Christmas down like pretty much the day after Christmas, and I'm just like I'm done. I never want to look at Christmas stuff again. It's really funny how that happens. And then and then for New Year's Eve, I don't really know of any movies that are really tied to that. I did do a review New Year's Eve Evil, which is an amazing slasher movie, exploitation movie from the 80s. I did a review of that one, and that does take place on New Year's Eve. But that's such a great movie. I don't really, I mean, obviously it's steeped in that on that holiday, but and that's a really new discovery for me. And that's a movie I can watch, probably anytime. It doesn't have to be a seasonal thing. So it's funny. But again, like I said before, I was down in Portland over on New Year's, during the New Year's weekend, and then on the way back, I stopped at Bull Moose Music in South Portland, and it's just an incredible space. I was kind of overwhelmed by how many items they have in the shop. Like it's just huge. It's basically like a big warehouse. It's the biggest one I've ever been to, and I think there's one or two. The one Bull Moose in Portsmouth, I believe, moved locations to a bigger place. I haven't been to that, and I haven't been to the first Bull Moose I ever went to was in Portsmouth. That was a game changer for me, and ever since then, that's where you know, I remember my friend Sean Russell, who was a guest on the show last year, when we used to hang out when we met in school. He used to live in Portsmouth, so I used to go down to Portsmouth fairly often. And we used to go to Bull Moose all the time, and that was the first time, he kind of introduced me to Bull Moose, and that's where it started. And ever since then, that's the only big music shop that I go to, or movie shop, and just amazing. And I believe there's another location in Saco, which I'm not sure if I've been to that one. There's a Bull Moose in Saco, Maine. I might have been to that one, and I think that one is a fairly large place too. But one of these days I'll hit that up. Saco is quite a ways away from here in South Portland. It's about easily 2 hours. Saco is easily 2 hours away. So if I'm ever down in that area, that would be kind of a fun thing. But anyway, when I was down in Portland this past weekend, I went to the Bull Moose in South Portland, and I got a great new assortment of films. A few films I've seen, but the majority again were films I did not see. And one movie I have been seeing, I've seen it in a bunch of stores, always usually Bull Moose. I primarily always go to the one in Waterville. I'm going to be going there on Sunday or sometime this weekend. I'm going back up there because there was an album that I ordered. It's a double album by this ambient electronic group, Tangerine Dream. There was this album that I really wanted to get, a double album from the 70s that they put out. And it took like 2 or 3 weeks for it to come in, and it just came in. So I'm going to get up there this weekend and pick it up either Saturday or Sunday. And I'll probably have to buy a couple of movies when I'm up there. So I've been going up there like quite a bit. I've gone to Bull Moose probably about 3 or 4 times in the last 2 or 3 weeks, which is a little bit crazy, but it's cool. It's time well spent. A lot of the times too, when I see a lot of these guys, particularly Mood 616, he does these gigantic movie hauls where he'll basically, seems like what he does is he mostly buys all of his films online. He goes to the company's website and orders things that way a lot of the times. I never usually do that. But he'll usually get like a massive box, and he'll spend probably hundreds of bucks, hundreds of dollars on movies. And it's kind of crazy. I mean, he drops some serious cash. I always go to Bull Moose and I just buy it, in person and in store. And I still spend, a pretty good amount of money. But what he gets in for his hauls is like at least 2 or 3 times the amount of content that I get, which is just crazy. But this movie here, Delirium, this is a movie I have seen when I've been going to Blue Moose, mostly the one in Waterville, but then also the other locations, mostly the one in Bangor I used to go to all the time. I kept seeing this movie, and it was fairly expensive. It was like close to, I believe it was close to like $30 on Blu-ray, Delirium, and I never seen this movie, never heard of it, and it has a really cool slipcover. And I heard that this movie, I remember seeing a review for this film, and it sounded like it was awesome, like a really great, slasher exploitation movie, super gritty, super nasty. And so when I was at Bull Moose this past weekend, I saw it there, but it was really cheap. So I picked it up and I was just like, yes. And when I saw it in the stores originally, it was all sealed, so you couldn't look at the artwork. But this copy you could, and then you were able to see, this is the updated, more modern version artwork, with the newer graphics, and then this is the original, without the slipcover. This is the original artwork, and it's just so awesome. And when I looked at the reviews for this, I was just like, oh yes, this is totally, you know, perfect and pure sleazy, bloody, exploitation at its best. Came out in 1979, and I just watched this for the first time the other night, actually last night, and it's it is an it's a ride. It's totally worth totally worth buying. I kind of kicked myself for not buying it sooner. I like to support a lot of these companies: Blue Underground, Severin, Mondo Macabra. This came out on Severin, and these companies are just amazing. And I love to try to support these films. I try to always I don't usually buy them like on Amazon. I don't usually buy movies on Amazon or anything. I usually buy them Apple Moose, or if I didn't do it that way, I would go through the the websites directly. But Delirium is just man, what an awesome movie. Totally totally violent and kind of batshit crazy at times. It was directed by Peter Maris and it came out in 1979. The cast is Terry Tenbrook, Turk Tchaikovsky, Baron Winchester, Debbie Chaney, Garrett Bergfield. And I guess this film was a pretty big success when it came out, as far as the in the world of exploitation, and it's pure exploitation cinema. I mean, it's so raw and it's so dirty and it's so nasty. It's the kills are really great. It's got a real interesting story because it's centered around this group of Vietnam veterans that basically start this like vigilante group, and they go out and they basically you know go after criminals or people that have gotten out of prison with relatively light terms, prison sentences, and they basically go after these people, and then they also go after criminals in general and act as like this crazy like vigilante group. And but they're all like kind of psychotic. All the people that are part of this group, this organization, are all like completely insane. And then things evolve to where they start killing. They start end up going after innocent people, and they they end up getting into this big confrontation with the police, and the ending, this big giant climax of an ending, is pretty epic. It's a pretty amazing like gunfight. It's super brutal, it's super violent, but it's awesome. The other thing that's cool about this movie that's interesting is it actually has, it's kind of almost two stories or two side stories, um, almost to a degree, like two movies, at least from what I got from watching this. I've only seen it one time last night, and the thing that I got is it almost feels like it's two movies in one, because there's like this, the way the film starts, and then when you get to like say the second or third act, it kind of focuses on this vigilante group, And the first act of the film also, and it's all tied together really well. But the first act of the movie is basically centered on this guy who is also a Vietnam veteran who is completely psychotic and insane, and he's essentially this like serial killer. And the first part of or first half or first part of the movie is basically about him going on this like crazy rampage, you know, all where he just randomly comes across people and he like breaks into people's houses and he kills like all of these women and it's super brutal. It's super brutal. And just like the first, few minutes of this film when it starts, it's like whoa, like it's pretty intense and it's pretty gory. And again, all practical effects. It's hard to believe it came out in 1979. Um, it's pretty gnarly, but it's so raw and it's got like a totally tiny little budget to it. It The other thing that it reminds me of, which is a film I want to eventually review, which I haven't done, is it reminds me a lot of the film of Portrait of a Serial Killer, or I should say Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, which is an amazing movie. I think it's one of the best movies about a serial killer. That movie was directed by John McNaughton, and it was the story of Henry Lee Lucas, the infamous serial killer who claimed and possibly had murdered hundreds of people, over 100 people. And that movie is brutal as all hell, and it's super gritty. It's super low budget. I love that movie. I definitely consider that movie in the realm of the exploitation world, just because of how raw it is, and and just the how low the budget was. But it's just such an amazing film. It's got this art house quality to it also. But and that's a movie I eventually will definitely do a show on because I love that movie to death. And Delirium really reminded me at times of that film. It was totally its own thing, especially when you get to the second act and it's centered on this gang of former, or a gang of these veterans that are, they start up this, crazy vigilante group. But the first half where it's centered on this guy who's like this serial killer and he's just going on this rampage, and it's that aspect of it really reminds me of uh, of that movie, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, just because it feels the kills and like the methods and how he gets to certain places and just the way it's filmed, it feels like a documentary. It doesn't feel like well, it definitely doesn't feel like a Hollywood movie, but it's so raw and it feels like a documentary. And it gives it, when a film is shot that way, I feel like it gives it more of a scarier, more horrific kind of realistic, you know, factor. It's an interesting thing with when films are shot that way, and when movies essentially or particularly movies particularly dealing with say serial killers. There's like I'm a huge fan of like monster movies, but those are usually based in a fictional reality, fantasy horror. And I always find it more terrifying when there's a good movie about or a really well done movie about a true crime situation or based on a serial killer. And like Henry Lee Lucas, for instance, and even how Delirium is, and especially in the beginning of the film, the way it portrays this guy who is the serial killer. But when it's done in a way where it feels like it's a documentary, and especially if it's like based on real events or a real character, it's even more horrific. It's like to me those are the real monsters. They're way more scary, way more terrifying than Jason Voorhees or Freddy Krueger by light years. The other thing too that I love about Delirium is that again is that how raw it is, and it definitely has that documentary quality. And it kind of always makes me think of, well, that's one of the reasons what made say Texas Chainsaw Massacre such a terrifying movie is its its nature of how it was filmed, so it feels like a documentary. Even though I think Delirium actually acts also on a front, on a on a couple of different fronts. I feel like it's definitely a pure grindhouse exploitation movie. The whole investigation with the police that are involved with trying to track down this serial killer is really great. And then later on, which the story evolves to where it's focused on this group of these vets that are vigilantes. The the police officers and the guys who play the police and the writing for that and the where you see it kind of unfold in real time is really good. It's like it's pretty fascinating, and it's done really well. I like that it's kind of shot in real time. It has a certain kind of grip, but the acting is really good for it being such a on some in some regards a really crappy movie. It's got these other qualities where the acting's really good, the script is really good. It's got a lot of great twists and turns, and it's again it's got all those great things that you want to see in a great and in a a classic exploitation movie. It's super gritty, it's super raw, it's really ultra violent, it's really sleazy, it's just really dirty. The music is awesome. It's totally it was shot in '79, so it's got all this great music to it. It's an awesome movie, and again a new discovery. Never seen it before. Never heard of any of the folks that were involved in this film before. Peter Maris. There's a really great Peter Maris directed the film, and there's a really great documentary about Peter Maris. Actually, it's an interview where it's just basically the people at Severin interviewed him for about 20 minutes, and it's super interesting. He did a bunch of movies, Peter Maris, which again I never knew, had never heard of him before. The only thing I knew about Delirium was that I had seen it in various stores for a while, and I didn't buy it because it was at least when I first came across this movie, it was at least like $30, and I was able to pay. I only paid $19, actually a little bit more, or I should say a little bit less because of my credit that I have at Bull Moose, and we have those cards that the cards that you can use. But yeah, he's directed movies. The most recent one was 2007 by Peter Maris, and he did Zombie Hunters, The Survivor, which came out in 2006, another recent movie. Finish Line, A Cruise Down Memory Lane, Warpath, which actually came out in 2000, Alien Species, The Killer Inside, Phantasmagoria, which was a video game, or is a video game, Can It Be Love in 92, Diplomatic Immunity in 91, Hangfire 91, Ministry of Vengeance, which came out in 89, Viper 88, Terror Squad 88, Land of Doom 86, Curse of the Red Butterfly in 82, and Delirium 79. So he got his start. This was his first movie, so he's gone on to do quite a few movies. He's pretty up there in age, but he put on he gave a really great interview, and he's originally from Greece, and he moved to the States, and he talked about too where he grew up, during the time of war, so violence and or extreme violence in cinema never really bothered him, and so really interesting interview, and I look forward to checking out more of his films. And again, like I've said before, I've said many times, that's one of the you know personally my favorite experience around this whole kind of world is taking that deep dive, and every day or every week I'm discovering a new director and a new film that I had never seen, a film I've never seen before, a director I've never heard of before. And if I like them, then it's like, I check them out and check out all the other films that they've done, and it's just like, wow, there's so many other worlds to explore. And it all starts with a movie that maybe I have heard of and that I have seen, and then it trickles down and opens up these other avenues and these other doors, and it's super cool. Can't get enough of it. But yeah, Delirium. 1979. This is such a great movie. The Blu-ray transfer is awesome. And again, the special features, there's two interviews with the director, and also there's a really great interview with the makeup effects guy on here. Super gritty, super raw, all things you want from a, just a down and dirty exploitation movie slash slasher movie. It's a slasher movie too. I would definitely say that. It's got a little bit of everything in it. Great music, great atmosphere, great kills, super raw, and yeah, I love this movie, Delirium, 1979. So, if you get a chance, please check this out. I'd say too, even if you're kind of a movie collector like I am, and you love these kinds of movies, and you want to add something really special to your collection, I definitely suggest picking it up because it's really awesome. So this is Jason Dean. I want to thank everybody for checking out this channel and watching all my crazy videos. I really appreciate all the love and support people have been giving me, and commenting more and more on the channel, which is on a lot of the videos, which has been great. I love interacting with people that way. So, and we have a mutual commonality or a mutual love for a lot of these great films. So yeah, have a great day, and we will see you next time. And if you like this page, please like and subscribe to it. And we will see you next time. Peace.